I did, and it was delicious. But as I said, we're not going to. It was so sad. We couldn't enjoy it, could we? Because we missed you so much.
No.
You're supposed to be miserable, have
We were
nothing
miserable.
to say to one another.
We sat there in silence thinking, George would have liked this lunch.
Yeah, we said that a few times as well, actually.
That's right. You know, we had all the favourites. We looked at them, didn't touch them, just cried. And the waiter came back and took them away. I said, do you want these to go? I said, no, that was just the Georgia isn't with us lunch.
And I actually won't tell you what I had for lunch because it's too sad. It's too sad. I haven't had time.
Oh dear. Right. So I think we're ready to go. So let's go. Hello, everyone. Dear listener, welcome back to the studio. I normally say we're in the studio. We're half in the studio, half not. So through the power of technology, we're still being brought together. So I'm Ian, Editor-in-Chief of Internet Retailing. And joining us over the airwaves is...
I am Georgia and I am the head of marketing for Adobe.
I love that pause. It made it sound like you were halfway around the world rather than 100 miles away, but that was really good.
Do you know what it was? It was me suddenly realizing that I don't have that cool kind of podcast voice in my ears, because when you're not in the studio, you just sound like your normal self. There's something about the studio mics that make you sound like a better version of yourself. And you two are going to sound fantastic.
No, you will sound fantastic, but you've let it slip that this isn't my normal voice, and that you would hear the real, very, very squeaky voice. Anyway, with a lovely voice, we're very, very, very pleased, and you'll see why that's funny in a second, to welcome Paul to the studio. Paul, welcome.
Thank you.
Now then, tell everyone who you are and why that was a very funny introduction.
I'm Paul Hornby. I am Digital Customer Experience Director at the Very Group. We're already off and running with the puns, Ian. I love it.
That's
it must be a record.
Oh,
There's only one pun, and I've done it now. It's the end. So look, let's start off with the job title, which is pretty cool. What does it actually mean?
Yeah, my role at the Very Group is basically to be responsible for the end-to-end digital experience for all of our brands across all of our devices. You know, practically, that means I'm lucky to be responsible for a really talented group of people who cover product management, delivery, engineering, UX design, UX research, and those people come together in cross-functional teams and are responsible for the different stages of our journey. Product discovery, my account, checkout, the onboarding experience for new customers, our app. And their role really is to understand how our customers utilize our digital journey, understand what jobs they're looking to do, and then constantly optimize that experience and manage the underlying tech to help customers get great outcomes and also help the business get great outcomes as well.
So other than buying stuff, what's left? That sounds like digital experience.
There was everything.
It's like, what do you do? Oh, just everything.
Well,
no, I mean, just how does that fit in though with the other bits of the consumer's interaction with you?
To answer that question, you probably need to know a little bit more about Very and the Very Group. Obviously, one of the unique parts of our brand is that we have our own financial service proposition. So Very, for example, has Very Pay as its preeminent payment option. Over 90% of all of our transactions will utilize Very Pay. And so as a result of that, customers will come to us for a variety of reasons. For a standard retail business, customers will come to the website to find the product, buy it. They may potentially come back to see where that order's up to or to return it. Whereas for us, it creates an account that our customers will come back to, manage their account, check their balance, make payments. They've got a lot of flexibility to manage that account themselves. So we end up having customers coming to us on a variety of missions, broader than what you would get normally on a standard like D2C online.
Yeah. So you went down the My Account route. So it's worth, I think, just pulling back a bit here, because younger people who just joined the world of e-commerce will think, see it, click it, check out, buy, job done. Whereas this idea of credit comes very much from an age of the catalogue businesses. So is it worth, because Very is such a modern, short, lovely URL, it might just be worth drawing the line from the 1,000-page print catalogues and the incredible transformation the business has been through to get to where you can just be throwaways. Oh, yeah, well, we have our own credit offering. It's like,
Yeah, that is the really interesting part of the Very Group story. You know, very.co.uk as a brand has only been in existence since 2009, but the history of our business actually goes back to 1890. So as you span through
or Web 1.0, as you call it,
as you span through the 1900s, in essence, the Very Group was two different businesses, two big rival northern businesses, Gus Home Shopping, or later Shop Direct, and Littlewoods. So Gus Home Shopping, Manchester-based, multi-channel business, catalogue retailer, high street presence with brands like Index, Editions Direct, Choice, K's, Great Universal, Empire Stores. And then the Liverpool rival was Littlewoods, so the Littlewoods brand. And then those two businesses were brought together in the early 2000s. There was obviously an awful lot of history prior to that, which we've skipped over. But as the two organisations were brought together in the 2000s, we then still had a big multi-channel business.
And by multi-channel, because I think in the mid-noughties, Littlewood sold, it was hundreds of stores, wasn't it? And then it was a catalogue business. So for our Gen Z listener, a catalogue business is 1,300 pages of glossy paper full of pictures with the equivalent of a barcode where you could transcribe that code onto another piece of paper and send it in the post with a promise to buy it, and then you'd send it. So it was just like mail order shopping, but mega sized.
Yeah. The three channels that we would interact with would be catalogue, like you've just said, and we would send out two big 1,000-page catalogues a year to millions of customers, and they would be able to go through that catalogue. You know, I remember it when I was a boy at Christmas time or birthdays, and you'd go through it and you'd circle the things that you want.
Bend the page down.
Yeah. And it was a waste of time because you weren't going to get any of it anyway, not in my household anyway, but you would at least live the dream. And then you could either buy that via your mail order, like you've said, transcribing it onto a piece of paper, or calling somebody and taking that order over the phone. There was also, you know, back in the day, a different model known as an agency model where, you know, somebody in your street would take responsibility for collecting all of those orders. So that was almost one channel. Then we still had a really significant high street presence, and that was predominantly via either Littlewood stores or the Index Extra stores, where, you know, everyone of that age will remember. And then we had web, but, you know, web was definitely the smaller of the channels. The interesting part that ties our heritage and the catalogues together was the offering of flexible ways to pay. So typically when you would get this catalogue and you would find the product, it wasn't that you would typically choose a product and buy it in one go. You would typically buy it and be able to spread the cost, you know, either spread the cost over a number of months or typically spread the cost over a number of weeks. And
the pricing would be buy this for $29.99 or £2.36 a week over 52 weeks. Excuse my maths there, or, you know, whatever it was. And so the pricing, I'm trying to do mental maths. The pricing proposition was very much around weekly affordability as well.
It was. It absolutely was. It was about creating opportunities for a wide base of customers to be able to get the things that them and their family needed, but also to manage their household incomes in a way which worked for them. And so the heritage of our business was offering great products and offering really flexible ways to buy them. So as we then, you know, transitioned into the 2000s, what we wanted to do was transition more of that online. And I remember within the organization in the 2000s, we had a strategy which we called 70-20-10. We wanted 70% of the business to be online by 2010. But what we wanted to do was bring those tenets that had been consistent in the organization of offering great choice across a multitude of categories. And again, we'll talk a little bit more about who we are and what we do as a business in a minute, but bring that real wealth of choice and that real flexibility of payment choice to the digital proposition, and then allow customers to buy stuff and spread the cost online. But also we had a real heritage of being able to make intelligent lending decisions. So really good risk-based decisions from years and years of our catalogue business, allowing us to say, well, we can credibly lend this amount of money to this person. We can allow this person to pay off over X amount of time and manage the debt.
And what's interesting about that, of course, is that a lot of these customers are invisible to normal means. So you might have, we talked about the agents, we skipped over that, but you might have somebody in your street or your area who was responsible for selling, collecting cash, remitting it. But she, and they generally were women, she may not have had a credit card in her own name. So your credit file were all of these people who were under the radar of credit card companies, but yet you had a trusting, long-standing relationship with them and a role in the community. So it's this group of people that otherwise, like if you start in digital marketing today, you wouldn't just dream up a segment of people who are undetectable, who aren't on a credit file, and who are well known in their community. You just wouldn't have that to start with.
You would have been the only, I mean, obviously now you have all of the payment kind of spreading companies, and I'm nervous to name names, but 'cause they come and go. But at the time,
many are available.
Many are available. But like at the time, would have really, as to Ian's point, to so many people, been the only kind of payment spreading solution for shopping across that many products outside of a credit card, of a major bank.
Definitely. Right? Our job was to translate that into a digital world, create a compelling digital experience, and then find a way of translating the mechanism of how you could spread the cost online. So, if you fast forward to today, if that was our legacy, that's our history, rich tapestry of history going back to 1890. Today, the Very Group's the UK's largest domestic online-only retailer with an integrated, flexible payment platform. We've got two main brands, very.co.uk, which operates obviously here, and we've got very.ie, which operates in the Republic of Ireland. And then we've still got the Littlewoods brand in existence, online only, littlewoods.com. But those brands together do just over 2 billion a year in sales. We've got 4.4 million customers across the UK and Ireland. And we're multi-category, so back to our heritage of offering a wide choice to our customers. We pretty much sell everything apart from books and food, really. Fashion, sports, electricals, homeware, beauty, toys. And then we obviously offer customers really flexible ways to pay via our Very Pay proposition on Very. And over 90% of our sales happen on Very Pay. So it's a payment choice that customers...
That is such an interesting point. So Georgia mentioned the multitude of payment options, which haven't always had the world's best reputation, whether it's around issues of affordability, credit control, etc. You said something very interesting earlier on about the role of credit, which isn't to rack up debt and get into trouble, but is very much to help with smoothing or to support families' purchases throughout the year. Just tell us how, in a world where, again, if you arrive as a digital marketer today, you see the world, everyone pretends they care about the customer. They don't. They just care about the credit card number and that it clears. So in a world where everybody you can address has a credit card, what's the proposition to the customer that says, you can put your card down, this is what we offer you in this modern context? Just explain that for our listener.
Yeah, well, I mean, firstly, we're a fully regulated business, so being a responsible lender is the cornerstone of what we do, and we spend a huge amount of time and effort ensuring we understand customers' ability to repay and be responsible lenders. But to answer your question, the easiest way of probably starting that is to talk about what we truly believe our purpose is. Our purpose as a business is to help families get more out of life. Like, we know that there are, millions of customers, like, we've just spoke about, who are going through the same struggles that everybody is and just trying to manage a household income. Be that, I've got two young children, one 7, one 4.5. The 7-year-old grows at a rate of knots, and we have to buy a new school uniforms twice a year, new shoes 4 times a year.
You're feeding him too much.
Yeah. And so there's the realities of we need to buy them new clothes, or we go on holiday and we need to buy them new clothes, or it's Christmas time, or there could be something in the household where the washing machine breaks and it's a distressed purchase. Our role as a brand is to help families in those moments by giving them the choice, but then also giving them flexible ways to pay so that they haven't got to pay it off in one go, but also that they've got someone reputable who they can trust, and also it gives them control over how they pay back. So, the standard mechanism for how it works when you buy with us is if you come in and you use VeryPay, let's say you bought a school uniform, if you pay off within 3 months, it's interest free. Or you can choose buy now, pay later. You could buy over 6, 9 or 12 months. If you pay that off when the buy now, pay later matures, it's interest free. So the only time you would pay interest is if you allow it to roll because you want to pay a minimum amount to spread it over a longer period of time, at which point it does default more to behaving like a credit card. But it just gives customers that choice. And obviously they can then do that across all of the product categories that we offer.
Yeah.
They can have mixed baskets where they're buying fashion, homeware and electrical. So the core of our proposition has always remained try and offer them great things and then try and offer them really flexible ways to buy them and manage their own household income.
And just to finish on the customer perspective, because, when people think about e-com, a big attractor there has been that prices tend towards the minimum. So if you're doing that sort of snaky thing, we say, it's interest-free credit, but the price is double what you pay elsewhere, that wouldn't work. So you're providing the credit, but at market competitive pricing. So the prices aren't marked up.
Yeah. For Very, if you look at all of our price indexing, it's all standard. And, the reason for that is what you've just said. If you take Littlewoods as an example, the Littlewoods prices have always been higher, and that has been a legacy of how the catalogue business would always work. The price point would be higher because it would factor in free delivery, free returns. It would factor in some of the payment structure. In a world of price transparency and, in essence, recruiting customers on a SERP, if you're going to go in and the same product is X% higher on a brand, it's highly unlikely that you're going to recruit a new customer or someone's going to buy. So core to Very has always been, it's an e-com site. It's it's a standard D2C retail proposition that offers a full multi-category breadth of choice at market standard pricing, but has the benefit of our own fully integrated, fully regulated, flexible payment platform. That's where we try and identify our sweet spot, really, because it gives customers the best of both.
And Ian mentioned before, some have had trust issues, and you're a trusted provider of that, right? So you've got the history of it. You've got this really loyal customer base. 90% of them using your buy now, kind of pay later options are growing at crazy rates. But a lot of them, you're still talking, maybe they account for like 15% of the site's sales. So, I mean, that trust piece is huge with your customer base, I think.
Yeah, we certainly try. Try.
How though do people find out about it? Because, we spend a lot of time looking at websites, clickety, yeah, that's fine, I get it, move on. The credit option hadn't really jumped out at me. And also, I'm trying to think, where do I see Very that might attract me to become a new customer? So we've covered the heritage, but frankly, we're now talking to the grandchildren of the people who remember the catalogue business. How are those people, the sort of Boohoo, ASOS, Shane generation, how do they find you? They just fall into a hole? Do they bump into you alphabetically? What's the main way you're getting a new customer to come to you?
Yeah, a number of ways. I think firstly, we've definitely been talking far more loud and proud about VeryPay as a proposition. I think if we were critical of ourselves, we would say that in the past we didn't talk loud and proud enough about the VeryPay part, and we would hero a lot of our above the line activity on our product. The real differentiator for us is when you tie the retail proposition and the financial service proposition together, and we didn't talk enough about that publicly. I think we are doing better now. We've recently launched a new great ad campaign, House of Flamingo, which is trying to really drive an increased level of awareness, drive an increased level of consideration. Again, all of the same thing, that we've got great retail products, be that fashion, homeware, elec, and great flexible ways to pay. And then also, we've been very mature in the digital marketing space for some time. So those are the main areas, but we've definitely been trying to double down in brand to tackle that exact awareness and consideration challenge that you've mentioned of A, helping more people know who we are, B, when people do know who we are, helping them understand more about the breadth of what we can do for them. And then C, when they think that we are somewhere that can serve their needs from a retail proposition, also helping them understand that they've also got the added benefit of really flexible ways of making that purchase and managing their own household income.
And obviously everybody kind of relates to different parts of your USP, right? So like, and I know you do loads of really successful like celeb product launches and collabs and things like that, because that's how I know about Very.
You are that generation.
I was actually semi-offended earlier when you said these people didn't point to me on the screen. How are you, I mean, from a digital marketing perspective, right? I'm interested, how are you experimenting with that? Like, how are you using, like, what's your kind of personalization strategy? Like, are you leaning kind of really into experimenting with what people relate to, whether it is very pay or whether it is more kind of different pieces of content, or are you still kind of just pushing the brand message?
Definitely not just pushing a brand message. You know, we've been really strong in the true performance aspect, I would say, for quite some time. You know, really mature when it comes to our management of, PPC, shopping. We were really early in things like display. We've probably backed out of that a little bit more now, but we're really heavy in paid social. TikTok's been a completely new channel for us over the past 12 months.
I've heard of that.
Yeah, that's been really interesting. But I think the big future opportunity for us more is how we can utilize more and more first party data in that space. One of the really interesting things for us as a business is when you are a proposition where 90% of your orders come via our own flexible payment model.
Exactly.
It means that we have a wealth of data because we don't have customers coming in and buying via guest checkout. We know who's buying from us.
Yeah.
And we typically know a lot about them. We can typically have, up to 140 attributes on an individual customer. So I think the bigger opportunity for us is how do we start to leverage more and more of that first party data and activate it in a variety of our channels. We do it really well in some areas. There's other areas where we've definitely still got work to do and we've got mileage to get after, but that's the direction that we're definitely going in Georgia.
And what about monetizing that data in the nicest possible way? So thinking about some of the things that Amex and other people do with on-statement promotions. If you know that they've bought a boy's blazer approximately age 12 and another thing approximately age 8, you can build a pretty good picture of the family, of where they're spending their money. So how can you use that data to market at them via the financial services and statements and other comms, rather than just saying, look, it's Friday, buy some more stuff, or it's summer, buy some more stuff, that kind of outbound marketing messaging?
Yeah, definitely. We can create a variety of different cohorts. When it's important to stress that, from a monetization perspective, we're not selling any data, but what it obviously allows us to do is understand a lot more about who our customer is, what they're doing. A great example is we can use some of our propensity modeling to pretty accurately assess whether someone's got a garden or not. And that type of information can then really help you at different stages of the year. Like, it's not really worth trying to encourage someone to buy a garden set if they live in a block of flats, for example. So again, almost building on the previous point, we've got a wealth of data and we've been able to successfully use it, and we execute a lot of it really well in CRM. I think one of the big opportunities actually is it within my own world, where what we haven't done as well, as consistently, is activated all throughout different stages of the digital journey, which is one of the reasons we've, seen in the 3 and a bit years since I've been back at the Very Group, we have been completely replatforming all of the technology that powers our sites and apps to create a far more modern platform that allows us to do exactly that type of thing.
Right. Now, because this is sound only, no one can see the glint in your eye, but I'm just going to hold off a second because we've talked about Very, but we have to talk a bit about you.
Okay.
Because the listener is thinking, hang on, isn't that the Paul I'm looking at on LinkedIn who seems to have been in and out of Very a few times? So you were at Shop Direct, left, went to Matalan, liked it so much you went back. So maybe just give us a little quick thread of your career.
Yeah.
And then I want you to reflect on, in the time you were somewhere else, having a lovely time and a lovely company, you went back to Very, how the landscape changed.
Yeah.
So first thing is thumbnail, the Paul Hornby CV, please.
Yeah, no problem. I did computer science at university, and had no clue what I wanted to do. I hadn't even done IT, GCSE, never mind A-level. And then everything I'd done was maths, and I was going to go and be an accountant or an actuary. And then at the 11th hour, applied to do computer science, went and did computer science.
Could have been a terrible mistake.
Yeah.
Sorry for all accountants listening. You are fantastic.
Including me, man.
Yeah, and my wife works in tax as well, so hopefully she won't listen. And then I in the third year of my uni, a guy come in from industry and taught us a module on e-commerce, and I thought that is what I want to do with my career. I taught myself to be, I'd say, a developer. I wouldn't be strong enough to say an engineer, and then started building websites and got a job. I think I was 23 at that point at what was then Shop Direct. Joined entry level as a developer, and then was really lucky to progress through the organization really quickly.
This is like one of those shop floor to boardroom stories, except you started out coding and now look where you are.
Because when you talk about the company, as Ian said, you were kind of interviewing yourself beautifully, but you sound like almost like you're like a founder, like a founder talks about their company. You know, you had such passionate knowledge of the history, and it makes sense because you, kind of rose through the ranks there.
Well, I wouldn't be that grandiose. I would say I had a good vantage point. So yeah,
that's very normal of you.
So when I actually started, I said, right, I'm get out of Liverpool. As you can tell from the accent, I'm from Liverpool. Joined Shop Direct in Manchester. Let me get out in the big bad world. Finish university, and then as I joined, I was told that the organisation was moving back to Liverpool. So
so you could take the boy out of Liverpool.
Yeah, exactly that. So it wasn't by design, but no, that was great. Yeah, exactly that. And then progressed through. So ended up being head of front end development. I think I was 27, and then
just pause. Head of front end development. Let's just put a bookmark in to say that is not the most customer facing commercial role in the organization. Fine, carry on. So we enjoy the progression.
Yeah, and then around that point, I started to want to diversify. So I went and did some qualifications in digital marketing. So I studied the IDM. I started to get more involved in product management, which then was allowing me to take the technical skill, which at that point was almost like the bedrock of what I'd learned. I'd also, when I'd say I was head of front-end development, there's two different teams. One team was the team who would build all of the marketing activity. So it got me deeply ingrained in our day-to-day trade. So even though I was managing a technical team, I'd be sat in trade meetings every single day. So it gave me a lot of commercial stimulus. And then the second team that we created we actually called them then the interaction development team. It was a front-end development team who would build the front-end experience. We started to run experiments, and that led to me getting far closer to product management. And we actually established product management in Very to really think about what are the business and customer problems, and then what are the best solutions to them rather than stakeholders coming up with the solutions. So that ended up with me becoming head of e-commerce, I think when I was 29. And then, I took more and more on in that role and become lucky enough to spend some time at London Business School. And that was brilliant. And that got me thinking about strategy and org design and op model. Then moved into a digital transformation role, which I loved and loathed in equal measures. I loved the academic part of being pulled out of the organization, being able to look at the whole organization and think about how you define a strategy, how you define a tech strategy, how you manage your CapEx investment, how you would restructure your teams, how you would try and drive consistency between an exec strategy and the action on the floor. But I found it really frustrating because for my entire career, I'd been on the coalface. I'd been involved in the trade meetings. Black Friday had mattered to me.
Yeah.
Even though I had a technical skill set, I felt like I was ingrained in the drumbeat of the org, whereas I felt like a consultant at that point where I was commenting on what the business was doing. So I knew I wanted an opportunity to take what I'd learned and apply it somewhere else. Matalan asked me to go there and run the online part of their business. I think I was 34 at the time. Brilliant opportunity. And it felt like a real life MBA. So I left Very on really good terms. I had an amazing time there. They completely understood why and went to Matalan. Loved it. Absolutely loved it. Brilliant business. Amazing people. Got the opportunity to learn an awful lot. Baptism of fire. It was definitely fair to say. But yeah, loved it. and kept in touch with Very. They were keen for me to come back a few times, but I was really happy where I was. And then I had a conversation with them in my third year at Matalan, and what they were really keen for was for somebody to come in and lead a transformation of all of the technology that powers all of the websites and apps.
Ooh, the whole train set.
Yeah, the whole train set, but do it, I suppose, with quite a commercial lens. So not tech for tech's sake. They wanted someone who could understand the technology, set the vision, but articulate it in a non-technical way to non-technical stakeholders. And I was really personally and professionally interested in that. So, tugged on the heartstrings a little bit, going back, getting back into an organization I knew, but had changed an awful lot. But then also an opportunity for me to go and learn an awful lot in a more technical sphere and bring some of the experience I've had to bear. So yeah, I've been back just under 3.5 years.
That is a lot of learning. So we talk a lot, Georgia, about skills and the modern professional, but you've ticked off your degree. Then we've got LSC, we've got CIM. He says like an MBA. You're like a poster boy for continuous professional learning and development.
I would say maybe I wouldn't say it felt like a standard linear path, but yeah, in my own way, maybe. Yeah. But I mean, I like learning, I like reading, I like trying to better myself. I always wanted to try and get to a position where I could have a broader level of influence. My ambition had always been to run a business, and I knew that, when I looked at really inspiring leaders, people I found inspiring were great people leaders who could motivate, but also people who were credible. And so
knew what they were doing, or it was based on a level of experience.
Yeah. And also, I'd watch great operators, and I'd see great operators who had empathy for another part of the business because they understood it and then could help ensure that their part of the organization could support because they knew it deeply enough. So I've just always tried to learn.
So when you went back to Very, and you just still known people, there were people there who'd worked for you and welcoming you back, they're hugging you, kissing you, and they're going, "Oh, that there Paul." He said, No, I'm not that Paul. I'm a new Paul. What was the difference? What was the difference with that time you'd had away, the more commercial time? So we went back to the organisation. If someone was doing a sketch of you 3 years prior and 3 years when you came back, what do you think had changed or that you tried to change to go into your now current role?
Yeah, it's a brilliant question.
That normally means I hate that question.
No,
I'm not going to answer it.
No.
Give me 2 seconds while I think of an answer.
Yeah, I'll use flattery, and then I'll think. Right, you've had your 10 seconds now.
I helped you out there, Paul.
Yeah, thank you. No, when I went back, I got asked this quite a few times actually when I'd gone back, and what I would frequently say was the organisation was familiar enough to allow me to get quite comfortable quite quickly, but it was new enough where I had to treat it like a new job. So, I went through a full interview process. I was interviewed by 7 different people. I wrote a full 90-day plan. I still came in and treated the organization like I didn't know it. A global pandemic had happened since I'd been there previously. There was still a lot of familiar senior people, but an awful lot of new people. We had a new chief exec. We had some new non-execs in the picture. The organization was slightly different in terms of its brand construct. So that was how I got the balance. In terms of me personally, I had major imposter syndrome coming back because I was coming back to lead a relatively big team, 100 odd so people. And there's people in the team that I lead who were there when I joined as a 23-year-old lad. So yeah, I definitely had imposter syndrome.
And did you talk about that at the time? I mean, we say imposter, everyone throws it around now because it's an accepted term in polite business conversation. Whereas when you're living it, it can be sometimes quite hard to say it or say it to anybody. So was that vocalized and or how did you get over that to settle down and say, no, actually, I'm having a great time? So how do you go from thinking, I've got imposter syndrome to getting over it?
I'm always quite open. So I definitely had some imposter syndrome because I knew that people may wonder why I was coming back or know me from a previous role or wonder, I had a great example. So one of the reasons I obviously was brought in was to lead this technology transformation, and a lot of the, most of the team wanted to go on that journey. And about a year or so in, there was a lad in the team who really close with, a great guy who'd been there previously. And we had a bit of an away day. We had a few beers. And he said to me, I was devastated when I found out you were coming back. And I thought,
thanks.
I love you too. Thanks for the feedback. I said, do you mind if I ask why? And he said, no, you're great. And we knew you would be great from a leadership standpoint. But we just all assumed you'd want to come back and keep everything like it was.
Interesting.
Because you'd been in the business before, and we felt like we needed a change agent. And we didn't know if that was going to be you, just because we didn't know whether you would come back with nostalgia for the past. So once we realised that you were coming in to be a change agent, then we had the best of both worlds. Yeah. But yeah, I was quite open and honest with people, to be honest, around. I proactively faced into it and said, I know there will be lots of questions. I know there'll be different points of view, but let me be very clear. Like I said, set a very clear 90-day plan. So I was quick not to make any quick decisions, quick judgments, did an awful lot of listening, and then tried to set a very clear vision for the team, which I think they galvanised behind, and that helped and set us on our journey.
Brilliant. And how do you, because this sounds like an ego thing, but I'm a bit like you in terms of I love learning, and I love reading and trying to constantly evolve. But you've then got a really large team that presumably you want to instill some of that in, or you kind of want a culture of, you might not, but you might want a culture of kind of involvement and stuff. How, what have you done, I guess, to kind of take that and bring the team along? Because there's no good if just you're the only one kind of learning and developing and growing.
Yeah, I think the main thing I've done is give them space. So, if you bear in mind that the journey that we've been on has been a journey of taking, a technology platform that has powered our websites and apps in one way or another since 2009, has done us proud. It's fueled huge growth for us and all that. But we had a very clear mandate to go on a journey that none of us had ever been on before. Now, my direct reports are head of product, head of delivery, head of tech, UX manager, insight and analytics manager. I deeply, deeply believe that they are all better at their crafts than I am. Deeply believe. Because if they're not, there's something fundamentally wrong. So my job as a leader is to create the space for them to be great, give them context, help them when they need help.
Are you sure that micromanaging them remorselessly 8 days a week isn't an alternative?
I'd like to think that they would agree with me. But
just asking for a friend. And
so the reason I say that as the answer, Georgia, is because we've all been very clear on what the journey is. We've all had to learn. Because the bar's been set in terms of this is where we're going.
It sounds so normal when you say it. And I was being slightly facetious before, but one of the challenges in retail is finding time, because everything's on, if you're lucky, on a weekly cycle. If you're trading, it's a daily cycle. And every time you pause to take breath, someone looks at you thinking, couldn't you have traded harder, quicker, etc. So it's actually a more difficult thing than it sounds to create that time for thinking and improvement, which sort of brings me back to the twinkle in your eye earlier on, which I haven't forgotten. I'm just going to say one word, and that word is Skyscape. Tell us.
Yeah, so Skyscape is the platform that we're building. Like we've just briefly mentioned, the remit I had when I was brought back in was to take us from the platform that we're on now, which is end of life. If you had a bricks and mortar store and all of your stores are out of support, you would want to face into that risk and do something about it. So,
or maybe not. Maybe that's why I'd want to go and work for another company rather than.
Yeah. So the journey that we've been on over the past few years has been to, clarify what direction we want to go in. Our existing platform, as much as it's done us proud, it's a big monolithic platform. It's generated, let's say, technical cholesterol is probably the polite way of putting it.
That's such a good phrase.
Which has made it more difficult.
Technical cholesterol.
That's our zinger of the episode.
It is.
Always one.
Yeah. I'm just hitting pause so I can delete that bit and then pretend to.
You'll
You
hear
can
it
have
in
that
the
one.
edit,
Yes.
Paul. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
You can
As
have that.
Ian said, digital collect.
Yeah, you can have that one. So yeah, we've been setting a direction. We've doubled down on wanting to move to a composable architecture, and we did that for a number of reasons. One, we want to build a digital customer experience layer which is completely uniquely ours, so that we can really elegantly intertwine the retail and financial service part of our propositions. If you were going to go and get an accelerator, they won't do that. And that will allow us to have maximum control. My belief when it comes to tech strategy is you buy rather than build, but you build where you need true strategic differentiation. And for us, that thin layer that our customer interacts with, I think, is the most strategically important. What we then wanted to do was not have to concede. And what I mean by that is, in our existing platform, it will power search, recommendations, navigation, basket, promo, content management, and a plethora of other things. And you naturally feel like you're conceding in some areas. It's a graphic equalizer. Some bits are good, some bits are bad. I didn't really want to concede. I wanted us as a pure play business to be able to go and find the best partners that we feel best match what we think our customer needs, what we think our organization needs, to be able to maximize value for customers, colleagues, and shareholders. And so we thought composable was great for us because we could go out there and find the right tech partners, integrate them into the presentation layer, really step change the experience for customers, but also give colleagues a lot more capability.
So when you were describing composable, you wanted to just get it over simply. So composable is not rotting food.
Yeah.
It's a technology approach. How did you sell that to your stakeholders? They said, "Oh, not more technical jargon.
Yeah.
It's not broken. Just carry on."
Yeah.
How did you describe and sell a new composable architecture to them?
Yeah. An awful lot of the time I spent in my first few months back was chief storyteller.
Yeah.
Having to try and craft a story, and the story that we told was one of burning platform and a burning ambition. The burning platform was our platform's out of support. It's end of life. It'll be out of extended support soon. But more visibly, what we did, we built a slide where we'd show like a schematic of our platform and then plop a big ball of spaghetti on top of it and say, like, practically, that's what it feels like today.
Right.
The presentation layer, the business logic, all the data is tied together. It's really difficult for us to make changes. We want to be able to keep pace, and it's increasingly complex. And what we want to do is move, our burning ambition is to move to a composable platform, which, practically means we've got different Lego blocks that we can plug together. This will take us from this to this. So we spent an awful lot of time, again, back to the point earlier. The mandate was that this cannot be a tech for tech's sake migration. That will not work in our organization. And also, it wasn't the goal. The goal was build a tech platform that will provide fantastic technical foundations for us to grow, but build a platform that is better for our customers, solve some of their key problems, but also creates far greater capability for our colleagues. So yet so much of the time, and still now, was telling that story, helping people understand it, trying to explain it in a non-technical way that they could grasp. But it's tough, so it's an ongoing concern, but we're doing really well. 50% of all of Very's web traffic is now on Skyscape. So
you're sort of sneaking it in. So it's not like a big, flick on, flick off.
Yeah, no big bang.
It's just oozing its way in.
Yeah, thin slices.
Thin
the
slices,
way that
okay.
we phrased
Oozing
it.
probably didn't.
Yeah, oozing is a bad word.
Yeah.
Tech ooze.
We're aiming to minimize ooze in the migration. So yeah, we were very choiceful in terms of how we were going to do it. Do we go build it all, big bang?
Yeah.
And we said no for a number of reasons. One of my steadfast beliefs is that we should unlock value quickly, get fast feedback, get things in front of our customers quickly. So we identified parts of our upper funnel, homepage, search, product detail page, where we thought we could get those bits in, test them, understand the platform. And so that's definitely put more effort in, because as you go through a very shopping journey now, you will flip between Skyscape and the existing platform, or obviously having to stitch all that together, stitch customer identity together, stitch the basket together. But yeah, with 50% of web traffic's on Skyscape now, that will be 65% in the next few months. And then we'll be done in the first half of next year for all brands.
Well, time is ticking by, and you said the word done. To me, it sounds like you might be up to something else next. So surely it must be time for a new degree or a PhD or something. So as the thin slices become the thick slice, when you head back to the office, what's exciting? What's next on your list? The next sort of thing to keep you occupied and interested?
Yeah, I mean, the laser focus at the moment is getting it done, but
that's a good project manager answer.
Yeah, but the really exciting thing is how we yield the value once it's done. You know, the benefit of the platform is that so much of it will unlock value on day one. I'll give you a quick practical example. If you search for white trainers on our old platform, the first 3 products that you get back are black trainers.
Oh,
it's not
that's a
great.
Pet peeve.
And that is because the search platform that we used previously will use product description and name, and it might say black and white trainers. The platform that we've put into Skyscape, which is called Constructor, you know, AI is definitely an overused term, but they've got a great AI use case where the algorithms self-learn and self-heal. So white trainers return white trainers. We had a great example where girls Converse, the first 30 products were all girls Converse, but girls Converse clothing. Whereas we know the intent of that search term is girls Converse all-star trainers. The AI learns that. So when we get the platform in some ways, that's when the fun starts. You know, that's when we've got so much new opportunity. You know, Georgia, we spoke before about first-party data.
Yeah.
You know, the opportunity. Constructor is a glass box platform, so we can see the algorithms, we understand why it works
glass
that way.
Box platform. Another one.
Yeah, and we can inject our own
that
data.
is an actual term, Ian.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. And after that, who knows? Who knows?
You see, this is like being schooled. It's lovely. Glass box, I like it. Right. Well, look, on that transparent and crystal clear note, our time's up. They're going to throw us out of the studio. So, Paul, just what an eye-opener. And just looking at my notes, we have touched on maybe a quarter of the things we wanted to cover. So I'll let you go on condition you promise to come back.
No problem. I would love to.
Great. Well, look, thank you so much, Paul. Georgia, remotely 100 miles away. And from the studio. It's all right, you'll be back next time. Fear not. Thank you both so very much.
No problem. Thank you for having me.
Ta-da! Done. Well, that was a laugh. I mean, literally, I think we covered 2 points. I know. I'm just looking at this very posh clock thinking, A, I need a clock like that in my office, and B, where did the time go?
Yeah, that flew.
It was incredible, wasn't it?
Yeah.